Hey there, Lester. The assassination attempt against the former president is obviously top of mind, but the mood here is also celebratory with the official rollout of the Trump-Vance ticket. All eyes right now on the Ohio delegation here. And the first time a running mate has been revealed in the convention hall in 4 decades. Republicans making it official.
The Republican nominee for President of the United States of America.
Former President Trump becoming the party's nominee for president. And alongside him, Ohio Senator JD Vance announced today as Mr. Trump's running mate, his name already being added to the campaign plane. The former president calling Vance to share word of his selection just 20 minutes before the public announcement, according to a source familiar with the call. Writing in an online post, Vance will be strongly focused on the people he fought so brilliantly for, the American workers and farmers. Vance, a 39-year-old first-term senator and the author of Hillbilly Elegy, is a populist conservative seen as the next generation of the MAGA movement, who's won the strong support of the former president's son, Donald Trump Jr.
I think he just helps us in places that we're going to need the help, in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan.
The party ticket now complete, with Mr. Trump set to formally accept the nomination for the 3rd time in his political career, but never under circumstances like these, just 48 hours after the assassination attempt against him. The former president, now reflective in a pair of new interviews. "I'm not supposed to be here," he says. "I'm supposed to be dead," adding it's surreal. Mr. Trump says he threw out the speech he'd planned for the grand finale of the convention. Initially a rip-roarer, he says, and extremely tough. But now, more unifying, as he describes it, and in a gesture to his former political rival, inviting Nikki Haley to speak at the convention, and meeting today with independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., according to the Kennedy campaign. But the nods to unity come even as Mr. Trump rails online today against what he calls the January 6th hoax and the, quote, lawless indictment against him in Florida. That federal classified documents case dismissed today in a stunning development by Judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, who ruled the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith was unlawful. Here in Milwaukee, protests over the Republican agenda outside the convention as the rally shooting this weekend puts a white-hot spotlight on safety. Law enforcement officials say there are no plans to change security measures and no known threats.
I think it gave pause to my wife and my friends and family at home. They did not want me to come, but it renewed my vigor and my grit that I wanted to be here.
Hallie Jackson, NBC News, Milwaukee.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.